So I used to run Patriot Prayer. Okay, so for like a year, a little more than a year.
I did not know I was on here with an extremist. I am not okay with this. Let's end the interview. Nazi.
A white Puerto Rican extremist. Anyway.
Welcome everybody to Blunt Force Discussion. It's Anthony, hashtag be the change, truth will set you free, yada, yada, yada. We've got a really great show today. Again, sometimes we go business, sometimes we go inspirational, sometimes we go political. This is probably going to be one of your more political shows, which I believe is though our following appreciates probably more than anything else. I love the green screen because it actually makes my camo look truly camouflaged, almost like I don't have a head. With that said, I am wearing one of our shirts in America. We can agree to disagree, which I think was fitting for the show because we're going to talk a little bit about something called Lexit, which, you know, a lot of people know Blexit, Brexit, and of course, Lexit. So we're going to talk about that and many, many other things. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get this show of Blunt Force Discussion started. I see our guest in the back beatboxing. I love it. So I'm going to introduce her. She is she's from California. She's a mother, a Christian, a conservative, spiritual warrior, freedom fighter, and she was one of the creators of Lexit, which she is no longer with, and we're going to get into that. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Carmen Estel.
Hello, everybody. How's it going?
You know, I actually, before we started, I remembered that I wanted to double check how to pronounce your last name, and I never did. Is that correct, Estel?
Perfect. Estel is it. That's right.
Nailed it.
But I just want to make sure that we correct the record. I was not one of the creators of Lexit, but I was a national director for Lexit. I don't want anybody saying she's misrepresenting us. Oh my gosh. And there's going to be war and fireworks all over again. So yeah.
My bad. Let's rewind. But yes, so you
accuracy is good.
Were you with it? Were you with it from the jump though? Were you with it from the get-go?
No, not from the get-go. I was with Lexit for about a year and a half, starting towards the beginning of 2021. So through 2020, yeah. So they started, I think they were founded around end of 2018, 2019, something like that, but they really started gaining a lot more momentum later.
That's interesting. You know, when I've been talking recently about how do I build the brand with truth will set you free, and it's like, who are we going after? Like, who are we? And I don't know about you, and I'll ask you this in a second, but I realize I'm going after people like myself that were raised Democrat, that grew up Democrat, and then ended up shifting over to realize that there is just such little logic and sense and self-worth on the Democratic ticket and the Democratic argument at this point. And I think that that's what Lexit, Blexit, and things like Walk Away were tremendous at. So Carmen, what was your political upbringing like?
So actually, you know, for me, I was actually somebody that was raised fairly conservative. So I wasn't one of the people that actually exited the Democratic Party. So Lexit stands for the Latino exit from the Democratic Party. Really, to be a part of Lexit, you just needed to believe that Latinos were being misled into voting incorrectly, into voting against their moral values, which they pretty much are. So so that was the goal of Lexit and groups like Blexit as well, is to get, you know, Black and the Latino community to understand that the Democrats are just telling them what they want to hear. They're not actually doing what they say they're going to do. They're not actually doing anything for those communities. And they typically don't align with the Latino or Black community values anyway. So in order to join those groups, basically all you need to do is believe in that cause. You don't have to have been an ex-Democrat, but many people were, for sure.
So I know that we both look at each other's content quite a bit as influencers on social media, and you have obviously some very, very comical stuff and then some serious stuff. And we kind of have to joke across the board, just with kind of the hot, stinky garbage fire, dumpster fire that we go through on a daily basis. What got you to start being so engaged in politics and the political climate in this country?
You know, actually, I started getting engaged about in 2014 because there was a lot of medical tyranny in California with the vaccine bills that were coming down the pike. So they were trying to mandate all vaccines for all school children, and basically start taking away their exemptions for school. And we were going to be at that time only the third state in the country to do that. And so it was like Mississippi, West Virginia, and then here comes California, removing your parental right to choose. So that really pissed me off. And I got in the fight back then so that I could protect my parental right to choose if I didn't want to give my child a chickenpox vaccine or, any of the, I think it's 10 mandatory vaccines on the schedule to go to school or daycare. So that really sort of like catapulted me into the fight. And I was more just angry and like anger posting, how we all just like, at first, when you first wake up, you're just like, oh my God, like I'm just so pissed off and and you're just firing stuff off. But back then in 2014, honestly, I was literally the crazy conspiracy theorist. I was the crazy one that nobody wanted to listen to because vaccines were good. End of story. There's nothing to discuss. You shouldn't have to, have a choice. You should give them to your child. Do you want them to die? It was all these crazy things. And so there was not a lot of people listening, to be honest. Like I felt like I was on Conspiracy Island, party of one. And it was a lonely, lonely place back then. So, when COVID happened, that's when 90% more people woke up, I would say. And then I had some more friends on Conspiracy Island. It was kind of nice,
So even though I was, and I think it's interesting that conservatives are now associated with Conspiracy Island when it comes to vaccines, because prior it was the ultra liberal side going, why would I put this into my body? Which I think the political, just everything is shifted so far from the original intent of the parties, which is part of the United States of America. We've shifted, Republicans and Democrats have flip-flopped in multiple periods of time. But as somebody that was raised, so my mom's a chiropractor, and I was raised very, very natural. I did get the initial vaccinations, and then once she went to chiropractic college, it was done. I was out and stopped getting it. So I was using religious exemptions. I said that I was a Christian Scientist, which I'm not. Back in 1989 is when we had to start doing that, which is insane that. So you're saying in California, they weren't allowed to even give religious exemptions or health exemptions. Is that what you're saying?
Right. At first, back then in 2014, I think the bill was introduced, but in 2015, the law passed that removed the parental, it was called a personal belief exemption. Yeah. They had previously lumped in the religious exemption into the personal belief exemption. So those were now one and the same. So, which we knew that was a bad idea also when they did that, because we knew the verbiage change was just to like slide in like, oh, we're going to remove just the personal belief exemption because it doesn't sound so bad. It sounds worse if you say we're going to remove a religious exemption. So what California did, was remove the religious exemption by lumping it into the personal exemption category initially. And then in 2015, the law did pass that removed your right to opt out of a vaccine if you were a parent, for your child to go to daycare or school. And then later on, I think in 2019 was when they actually took away the medical exemptions. So we knew back then that this was a slippery slope. This wasn't going to stop at the religious exemption or the political, the personal belief exemption. We knew that all of that was to lead up to removing the medical exemption. So we were blowing the whistle, but nobody was listening. Everybody was like, you're insane. They would never remove the medical exemption. They would never do that. But of course,
give an inch, they take a mile.
Yeah. And people just don't understand that that's how politics is. Politics, you can't give an inch. That's why we're so firm on things like 2A and other things like abortion. Like the minute you give an inch, it all goes downhill. They use that inch to just slide their way in. It's like,
Yeah, and it's dangerous.
It's like a little game of just the tip,
Yeah, just see how it feels. Or ouch, ouch, you're on my transgender. You don't know which way it's going to go. You really don't. And really, it's like and I think before the call I mentioned, like I'm a supporter of some liberal ideals. And I just had this argument this week with somebody when I said I would contend that the conservatives in this country, if I take my 39,000 followers on Truth Will Set You Free, I would say 38,000 of them are pro-gay marriage. They're okay with homosexuality and just from a standpoint of let people do what they want to do. Now, do they necessarily say that that's biblical behavior? No. But are they completely fine? Like if a gay guy comes up to me, I don't give a, whatever. I'm pro-gay marriage, and I think that that's the core of the group. But like you said, it is a dangerous slope because you give an inch, and here we are with penises in women's locker rooms. And it's like, and I think that destroys, and tell me what your thoughts are. I think that destroys the actual movement of acceptance, because I'm a big believer in acceptance, just not celebration. What's your thoughts on that?
So on the gay marriage thing in particular, it's like I always looked at myself as conservative.
Mm-hmm.
However, I was totally okay with gay marriage. Like you, I was like, oh, whatever. Like, who cares? Like, what's the big deal? Like, let them get married. At the same time, there was a part of me that knew, because I had very religious friends. I didn't used to be religious at all. I didn't used to be a Christian until the last 6 years of my life. But so before that, I thought, maybe this is okay, so they can have the same rights as the rest of us. We should be accepting and loving and stuff like that. And I still believe that we should be accepting and loving. And I still believe you should love people. But I also believe there should be boundaries when it comes to things like marriage, because marriage is traditionally a religious ceremony between a husband, a wife, and God. So that's really what it traditionally is. And actually, I don't even know that I'm a fan of marriage and government being involved, right? So I would prefer marriage to be a sanctity, within the church, and not have to be a part of government and a part of the state, and you signing this thing, and then they come after, it's like they incentivize you, obviously, to get the state involved. Yeah. So, but every time you get the state involved in something, it goes to hell. So, here we are. And so now, we've accepted gay marriage, and slowly but surely that has crept into the conservative side of the party. And now the conservatives are like, yeah, gay marriage, and yeah, conservative influencers that are gay. And yeah, let's have conservative, gay politicians and stuff like that, because they think like us. But, and this is going to sound controversial, but I'm not that controversial. I have gay friends, I have gay family members. I love them all. But once you say I am gay and I'm conservative, I honestly believe that's an oxymoron. And the reason why I believe that's an oxymoron is because, for example, if Mitt Romney or Eye Patch Crenshaw, if they vote against us on even one thing, like one gun law, one thing, we call them a rhino, right? Because it's one thing out of the entire pie, and we call them a rhino for one thing. But if you live your entire life more liberal, as a gay, gay lifestyle is not a conservative lifestyle. So it's technically not on the right side of the spectrum, right? And you live your life that way. Are you going to vote against, gay teachings in school? Are you going to vote against certain things that go against your very lifestyle, right? So it's interesting that we prop up gay conservatives. It's almost like a token, like the token Black conservatives that people, and I love my Black conservatives, but people call them tokens. I don't think they're tokens. I think they're very, very valuable, and they're not living their life like a liberal and then claiming to be conservative. Yeah. And a lot of gay people, I would say, are living their life, their social life, and a big part of that pie that we call politics, a big part of it is they're living it in a liberal way, but calling themselves a conservative. So how come they're not rhinos, but Dan Crenshaw's a rhino? Do you know what I'm saying? I get it. Yeah, I just don't think that they're conservative. I think maybe they're more libertarian.
I think that rhino, the term has been bogarted with establishment. I really think that what rhino means in this day and age is somebody that's establishment that truly is just, it doesn't have the people's thought process in mind. And what I would challenge to the conservative side, I've gotten in arguments on social media with some conservatives, what is the definition of conservative? And yes, conservatism could mean a religious base. It also can be conservative in ideals. I know a lot of gay conservatives, and there's even the page Gays Against Groomers, and they've got a lot of supporters. Conservative Ant is one of my favorite human beings to watch.
Yeah, he's hilarious.
He's hilarious. And he is somebody that shows very evidently that he would never want teaching of children any kind of indoctrination whatsoever. There's a lot of gay people like that out there. So I think, unfortunately, the crazy woke lefty gay people that aren't identifying with conservatism are the ones that ruin it for the conservative gay people. You can be Christian, and I hate I will stand firmly behind when people say you can't be Christian and gay. I think that is, to me personally, ridiculous. But for example, to your point, they're not living the Christian lifestyle. So anybody that has multiple sexual partners, would you consider them not conservative either?
I would consider them not living a Christian lifestyle.
So can they still be conservative?
I guess they can be conservative in every area except for their sex life.
So could a gay man or woman be conservative in every area except for their sex life?
Perhaps, however, they're probably going to vote for gay marriage, and then that leads to. So again, it's like this slippery slope thing.
Okay.
If somebody's totally wild and like living a life of like drugs and heathenism and all these things, are they going to vote for my moral values?
Well, I don't think
I don't know if they are.
I don't think they would label themselves conservative, though. I don't think that. I think we're talking about the leftists in that statement, anyway. So I think that's kind of the difference. And this actually will get us into the Lexit discussion, because I think a lot of it is this: we have such a tribalism in our beliefs, and that's what makes conservatives or Republicans or whatever or libertarians. Again, I think we're all part of the same fight, but we have now kind of separated each other to a distance where we lose things like midterms, whether you want to think voting is correct or not. But I think that across the board, we lose things because we are so tribal, because that's what we do. We are independent thinkers. And unfortunately, that starts to hurt us in the long run when it comes to winning. We win a lot of battles, but we lose the wars. So what I know you haven't talked about it a lot. What happened with Lexit?
So, well, it was a political organization. I haven't really spoken about this publicly too much. So it's a political organization, also a nonprofit, 501c4. And, the mission was to educate and empower Latinos to vote for their godly moral values over skin color and over the fact that somebody has a D next to their name. So that being said, at one point, I don't know how detailed I want to get, because I don't know how boring it would be, but
give us the juicy. Give us the juicy parts.
The juicy parts, yeah. So at one point, we had our gubernatorial primary election in California. And Lexit was backing one particular candidate named Anthony Trimino. And they became close with Anthony Trimino. We all did. We were all close. In fact, I was the one that brought Anthony Trimino to Lexit and said, hey, I know his wife. I know him now. I think he's great. What do you guys think? And then we ended up endorsing him in the special election that was the year prior, like a recall election we had.
Yeah.
So we actually endorsed him for that. And then we got to know him throughout the year and everything. And he became a friend of ours. And so for the primary election, I think we had like 26 Republicans, running on the ticket. So what ended up happening is Anthony Trimino did not make it on the ballot. A gentleman named Brian Dolly, who has a 10-year track record. He's a senator here in California. He's very popular in his district in Northern California. We down in Southern California, because we're so far away, we don't really know him. So there was a big disconnect there. So people in Lexit were like super upset that Anthony Trimino didn't make it on the ballot against Gavin Newsom. So it was going to be Brian Dolly versus Gavin Newsom instead of their favorite guy who was their friend. And, at first we were all bummed, but what are you going to do? I mean, it's a primary, 26 people, only one can win. And what ended up happening was Jesse and A-Rod, who were the other two board members with me. There was one other board member, but she was not really involved. She lives on the East Coast. But so it was mostly the three of us, myself, Jesse and A-Rod, and they decided to start bashing our gubernatorial candidate. So this goes to your point of like, we don't really win, and there's reasons why we don't really win. And they started bashing him, and I was like, what are you guys bashing him for? Oh, he's a rhino, he's trash, all this stuff. And I said, well, why is he a rhino? Why is he trash? Why are we bashing this guy publicly? And they couldn't really answer the question. They just were so pissed off that the California GOP endorsed this man instead of endorsing the Latino candidate. Okay. And this was actually verbalized.
Yeah.
That California, like everybody that we talk to in California, wants a Latino candidate on the ballot. So because the California GOP didn't endorse our Latino candidate, and because our Latino candidate therefore did not make it on the ballot, Now we are going to boycott Brian Dolly for the gubernatorial election.
So then
And
you end up back with Newsom again.
thank you.
Like you have to choose. So who was left on the ballot when it got down to it? Wasn't Elder still on there? So it was
No. This was just Brian Dolly and Gavin Newsom now.
That's where it ended up. Okay.
Yeah. So we have a choice between an amazing, awesome, very conservative. If you look at his track record, which they didn't, I'm the researcher, I was like, you guys, look at his track record, look at his voting history, look at what he's done. Like, look at what he does. He's a farmer. He also owns a freight company. Like, he understands the challenges and the problems that California has, the water, the land, the fires, all of these things. Like, he understands that. He's a researcher. He's good with finances. He owns businesses. Like,
he was great. He just wasn't Latino.
Yeah, he just wasn't their guy. And he wasn't Latino. I mean, those words were spoken. And so I was like, okay, you guys, listen, we need to have a talk about this, because I don't think we should be bashing and boycotting this guy just because he's not our guy. He's still a great candidate. And we have to encourage people to vote with their godly moral values, right? Isn't that what we're here for? And it was like, well, no, we wanted the Latino. California GOP didn't endorse the Latino. The Latino didn't get on the ballot. Therefore, we're going to boycott him. Nobody wants the white guy, is what was said to me. Nobody wants the white guy. Nobody wants to vote for him. A white guy can't win in California. I'm like, well, that's interesting. How about Arnold Schwarzenegger? How about Gavin Newsom? How about every white guy that's won in California? Like, everybody's been a white guy in California. So what are you talking about?
Well, the white guy has to be liberal to win. I see their point, but the reason their point stands is because of their own ideology. That's the reason it stands. Because if you would have a bunch of Latinos get behind a white guy and tell their Latino constituents, he no longer is white. He is he is supported by Latinos, which is, again, the exact thing that happens on the Democratic side. Gavin Newsom is as white as white bread. He is Wonder Bread and a half. But because he has made friends with the people that he brainwashes that are black, that are Latino, that are gay, that's not a skin color. You get what I'm saying? Yeah. He legitimately gets the vote because he's not associated with white. He's associated with all that stuff. But unfortunately, what you're telling me is what Lexit did is they put a wrench in their own side just because of identity politics, which is everything that we're not about.
And that's what we were fighting against, I thought, in Lexit, was identity politics. Like, you don't vote for somebody just because their skin color, and you don't vote for somebody just because it has a D after their name. Yeah. That's what we were fighting against. And here we were going backwards, going completely off mission. And so honestly, like, I didn't expect an endorsement. I didn't expect them to endorse him or anything like that. But what I did expect was a conversation. Yeah. And every time I tried to conversate about it and say, hey, we're the board, we need to come up with a cohesive message for our 500,000 followers, 500,000 followers online that look to us for leadership, amongst all the different platforms. I mean, when you combine them, and when they wouldn't talk about it, like, I had a side conversation with A-Rod about it, and he's like, listen, Jesse's not budging and we're not going to endorse the guy. And I said, that's fine, but can we just not bash him? Because he doesn't deserve that. He doesn't deserve to be bashed.
It hurts us in the long run.
Yeah. And so there wasn't an agreement there. And then when I finally would try to speak, like on a group messages or on the phone about it, it was always, don't bring his name up. We don't say Dolly's name in Lexit. We're not endorsing him. We're not only are they not endorsing him, but they were publicly bashing him, telling people not to vote for Dolly. So what they're essentially telling people is vote for Newsom. And the reason that they gave was they wanted to stick it to the California GOP. That was their reason. But the reason why I left is because they wouldn't have a conversation about it. Like, they wouldn't even have a conversation about our gubernatorial candidate as a political organization. And when they just completely shut that down over and over, I was like, okay, well, I tried. We've gone off mission. You guys are no longer even communicative. This is bizarre. I don't understand why you're doing this, and you won't talk to me about it. So I need to go. And then when I left, in the next 2 weeks, 25 other people left out of 40 people. So
where is Lexit today? Where's their status? Are they even still? I mean, I know who A-Rod is. I don't know if I probably have seen Jesse on people's lives. I try to avoid Instagram lives. I do Facebook lives. But what's the status currently of Lexit?
They're still going. I mean, they had to kind of scramble. They didn't have very many people left, because I walked out the door. People were shocked as hell. And they all agreed with me. They were like, well, we agree with Carmen. Like, what are you guys doing? And when they would ask questions, they would get shut down and they would get the hammer. So when they started getting the hammer, started getting disrespected and everything else, they started walking out the door one by one. About 25 more people left. So then they were left with like maybe 15 people in the organization across the country. They didn't have a whole lot. They had a couple sprinkled in California and then a couple across the United States. And then since then, I think they've like turned up the heat as far as like recruiting, because they needed to look relevant. I mean, I was like the person I was doing a lot in Lexit, and everybody saw me as sort of the face of Lexit because I was out on the street doing all the events. I've always done that. That's what I've done. So when I left, it was a huge shock to the group, and everybody else said, you know what, this is not right. Something's very amiss. And we're out too. And so they had to kind of struggle. And I think they've done a decent job probably of recruiting like as quickly as possible so that they can stay relevant. But they're mostly, it's mostly social media awareness, that they do. They don't do too many events. I hope that they're successful. I hope that they can turn things around and actually stay on mission. But the fact that they're not willing to conversate about political matters, and you just get shut down. It's basically run like, I'm the leader. This is the way it is. And this is how it goes. And there's no discussion. Well, that's not a nonprofit organization. That's not how you run it. You have a board for a reason.
Very dangerous for a nonprofit.
Yeah, exactly. And so I was like, well, I'm out, I can't stand for this. This is not even legal what's happening here. So I'm going to go. Yeah. So I think they're picking up the pieces. They try to appear like they're on mission, but clearly they were not on mission. They lost the majority of their organization. And apparently it's happened before I joined. Many people have reached out to me since and said, this is not new. This is how they run. And I'm like, oh, all right. Well, you learn something new every day. And it's a shame because I really believed in that mission. I believe that Latinos are being misled, and so, yeah, hopefully they will get back on track, because I think that they could do good things if they stay on mission and actually do the work.
Yeah. And you've spun off and you're doing, so what is your current mission? What are you working on? I know that obviously, as I mentioned, you're an influencer, you put together videos, you're a truther, obviously. Once you spun off, what is your ultimate goal? What are you trying to do? What are you trying to achieve?
I want to inspire people to be bold and stand up. That's sort of how I've always operated anyway, even before Lexit. I really want to just be like a beacon for people, for people to say, oh, she's a mom. She's a single mom. She works full time. She, she struggles too. She still does all this stuff. She still goes to board meetings. She still goes to rallies. She still speaks at events. She still stands for what she believes. Like, oh, I guess I can do this too. I just want to be a good example right now. And I've had a ton of organizations approach me and stuff like that. And I definitely, there's a lot going on that I'm not ready to talk about, as far as like my next step in this passion of mine.
But there's something that you're working on that is bigger, obviously. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. But it's passion projects, like I also work, I have a full-time job. So this is my passion, believe it or not. It seems like I do it all the time, but this is a passion. This is a side gig for me.
Heard that. Heard that.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
I don't know who's making money doing this. Nobody's making money doing this. This is all like, hey, listen, I care about the state, our county, our country, our children. And if somebody doesn't speak up, then who, like when I went to Hong Kong, I don't know if you saw that.
I saw that.
I went to Hong Kong in 2019 to fight against the Communist China party taking them over early. So they're trying to take over Hong Kong about 25 years too soon. And I went over there to document it and stand with the Hong Kong people. And it was gnarly, okay? But my family was like freaking out. Like, why are you doing this? What are you thinking? Let somebody else go. And I'm like, listen, if I feel called to go, I need to go. Because how many people feel called to do something like that? Very few. I only know like 5 people, journalists that went to Hong Kong, and nobody wanted to go. It was too like volatile, and I get it, but I'd been to Hong Kong a couple times before and I wasn't afraid of the landscape. I knew the city was like very Americanized and westernized and stuff. I wasn't afraid of it being, like China. It's not. It's totally different. But, you know, I just said to my family, I was like, listen, God calls a few people to do things. And if you don't do it, you know, you're going to regret that, number one, because it's always going to be in your heart and in your gut that you didn't do what you felt called to do. But then you're going to have to answer to God one day too. So, I mean, that's at the end of this, what really matters. It's like, not what my family thinks of me, not except my daughter, you know, because she's my responsibility, but it's not what my mom or my aunts or my friends think of me. You know, it's what God thinks and what my daughter thinks and what kind of legacy I'm leaving for people on this planet, because it's an evil place.
Yeah. You know, going back, and I want to get into the Christianity aspect of it, because I know you bring up God a lot. And I know that 2019 was only 4 years or only 2 years after you got into more heavily into Christianity. So you brought up you're a single parent mom, and there is and some of the influencers that I know you've dealt with in the past, and I was raised by a single parent mom. I've had to defend that with some of the ultra Christian people that are saying that that single parent moms can't raise a child, can't raise a son, can't raise a whatever. And I do agree that the nuclear family is incredibly important, but there is a way to do it. It's much better than being in a unhappy marriage, in my opinion, you're raising a child with no love or whatever. So have you had to deal with, and I know who some of the people are that you've been in conversations with, been in Instagram lives. Do they give you shit for being a single parent mom and just being like, yeah, I mean, I'm sure you're a good mom, but you're still a single parent mom?
No, but also maybe they give me grace because I wasn't a Christian when I got divorced. So maybe if I was Christian and then got divorced, if like I had gotten baptized and then like a year later got divorced or something, maybe they'd be like, what are you doing? You know? But actually it was like, I got divorced, let's say 10 years ago. I got baptized 2 years ago. So I didn't really have a foundation at all, with a spiritual foundation with God at all. Most of my life. And then I was introduced to it by some friends, and I didn't even know that Jesus ever actually existed. I thought it was a fable. I thought it was like a book of fairy tales, the Bible. And I thought, oh, that's a nice little fairy tale book. I honestly thought it was a work of like fiction. And so I watched a movie called The Case for Christ. One of my girlfriends had me watch it with her. And I was like, you mean he was like actually existed and he was real? I had no idea. Okay. Like that he was a historical figure that's been proven to exist. Okay. That was an eye opener for me. And that was probably like 6 or 7 years ago. And then I was like, okay, this makes sense, you know? And a few other things along the way, but yeah. So no, they don't give me shit for it, but I would tend to agree with them that single parenthood is not ideal.
Of course.
However, like my mission, because I came from a divorced household as well, my mission with my daughter has been to make sure that the relationship that me, her father, and her all have is extremely constructive and loving. So we are very good friends. You know, he can come over for dinner. He does come to my house. Like I go to his house. Like we have a very beautiful relationship as far as you can have. He's remarried. He has a new wife and a new baby. So, you know, there's no animosity. There's just forgiveness and love between all of us. And I think that's the best possible thing you can do given the circumstances. But yeah, so I see your point. And for sure, if I had been baptized and full on claiming Christianity, I think that's the thing, is like so many people claim Biblican, I'm a Christian, I'm a this. And then they are just living their lives as complete hypocrites. Mm-hmm. I think that's where the problem lies for me.
So I'm going to do a what if. So what if you had become a Christian, were baptized? Would you have not allowed yourself to get divorced?
In the Bible, it says you could get divorced for infidelity. So okay, got it. No, I would definitely not. I would try. I didn't want to get divorced. Trust me. I mean, that would already felt really sucky, and I didn't want to have a broken household at all, because I came from that, and I was like, oh no, I don't want to do this for my daughter. It was horrible. It was horrible for me. I don't want it to be horrible for her. Yeah. So I really didn't want it, even though I wasn't Christian. I felt like it was not good ultimately. And then when it was inevitable, I just said, okay, well, I'm going to make this the very best possible divorced family ever. And it is. I think most people are envious of the relationship that we all have.
So okay, I'm going to keep challenging this, because say somebody is in a very similar situation and they end up making sure that it's a loving relationship afterwards, and they foster that, but they are Christian, but they are just in a very lack of love, unhappy marriage, not abusive, just maybe mentally they just don't get along and they don't build each other up. And say the woman is very Christian and there is a child, even make a similar situation. You would not condone that woman leaving her husband or getting a divorce.
I would not encourage it.
Okay.
I wouldn't encourage it. I would always encourage seeking advice from a pastor or, whoever your spiritual leader is first, and seeing if there's a way to work things out. I would always encourage that first, because, you made a vow before God. So you should try to keep that vow. If it's absolutely a disaster and you don't see any way out, I'm not going to judge somebody for leaving. That's their choice. And we all make compromises. That's been one of my themes too, is like, we have very staunch Christians, which I get and I understand, but they claim to never compromise. And that's a lie. They compromise on a daily basis. They compromise by living in the state of California that funds abortion. So every time you pay your taxes or pay just to live here, right? You are literally funding abortion.
Yeah.
So, we compromise in so many ways that I think that we can't just hit people over the head with judgment all the time. I think you can encourage certain things, but if you're just constantly just being that type of Christian that people don't want to be, it actually turns a lot of people away from Christianity. Now, I don't think you should give people passes, but I think you should do it in a way that is loving and in a way that people go, wow, I want to be like that person.
Of course.
I want to live like that person. They're showing me a different way of thinking, and they're showing me that I should strive to be better, but they're not doing it in a way that makes me feel like crap.
Right. Our overriding point is bringing people to God, and everybody has a different way of doing that. But at the same time, the fire and brimstone and judgment and being the holier than thou person, when anybody can see through, like you said, we all make compromises no matter how perfect we are on a daily basis. People can see through that. And to me, it's not as genuine, and it does not bring people to God. But you are guilty of sometimes starting up some stuff, some issues, and that's with social media.
Me?
So you like to go unpopular. So I want to talk about the story where you told an unpopular truth online about the murder of one of your friends, a conservative friend, in September, which got you banned off of Facebook. So are you still not on Facebook at all?
Yeah, I was permanently banned.
Banished
from Facebook Island permanently.
So what happened? What was the story on that one? What happened?
So I don't know if you recall, but back in August of 2019, there was a lot of rallies up in Portland and stuff. And the Patriots and Antifa are always fighting up in the Portland area.
Are we talking 2020 or 2019?
2019, before.
So pre-COVID. Okay.
Was it pre-COVID? No, it was
2020.
Wait, 2020, the summer of 2020, excuse me.
Okay. No, you're good.
Summer 2020. It was like, there was a Trump rally up in Portland. There was a Trump rally. I'm trying to remember. I'm like, oh my God.
That seems like an oxymoron.
Yeah, it was. So they did it on purpose because they tried to keep all the Trump rallies out of Portland. And so on purpose, this organization that was previously called Patriot Prayer, that's really big up in the Pacific Northwest, or was, until they got booted off of everything. So they said, let's throw a Trump rally in Portland. And there was a few groups of people that said, all right, we're going to do like a truck drive through Portland rally with like Trump flags on the back of our trucks and stuff like that. And one of our friends, his name was Jay, the nicest, sweetest, kindest guy, who is a resident of Portland. He's lived there forever and has a business in Portland. He's a conservative. He's a part of that group, Patriot Prayer Group. And so they all were like in the trucks driving through. I wasn't there. I was in Southern California, but they were all driving through Portland, doing the Trump flag wave, basically. Okay. And Antifa. And at the end of that night, Jay was walking home. They had parted ways. Everybody left in their trucks, and he had like his skateboard or something. I don't remember. And he was walking down the street with one of his friends, walking to his house. And a guy that was with the Antifa BLM side came out of a parking garage and just shot him in the chest and killed him.
I remember that. I remember that video. Yeah,
okay. Yeah. So that was our friend, Jay.
Was he associated with Proud Boys? I can't remember.
No, he was not a Proud Boy. Nope. Okay. He was not a Proud Boy. So, so then it came in the media, they were saying, and in fact, the guy, the murderer, I forget his name now, Michael something, I believe. The murderer went on Vice, did an interview on Vice, like a couple days, like he was on the run, and then they found him, and then he did a Vice interview. It was so weird. Like the next day or something like that. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, it was bizarre. I'm like, how did you guys get this interview and you didn't turn this guy in? Anyway, he went on there and he was saying, well, the guy deserved to die because he was a white supremacist Nazi, basically. Okay, right. That he deserved to die because being that type of person is violence. Like, even though he didn't do anything violent, he was just walking home, but being a white supremacist Nazi was violence in their mind, right? So they can just kill everybody they want to. Okay. So
it was Michael Rannell, and he killed your friend Jay Danielson, who, as it's still listed, by the way, in the media, Patriot Prayer, member of Patriot Prayer, right-wing group. That's why I thought it was just labeled that way. So the right-wing group, Patriot Prayer.
Okay. Yes.
Thank you for the label.
Yes, exactly. So I used to run Patriot Prayer. Okay, so for like a year, a little more than a year.
I did not know I was on here with an extremist. I am not okay with this. Let's end the interview. Nazi.
A white Puerto Rican extremist. Anyway, yeah. So Jay,
we'll come back to the conversation real quick, but I just literally had the conversation about Proud Boys with somebody, and I do know some Proud Boys, and this person said, "What do you think about Proud Boys?" And I said, I know a few good ones. There's also some really shitty ones. And I said, and she's like, "Oh my God, I can't believe think that." And I go, "Why?" She's like, "That is the most racist organization. It might as well be the KKK." And I go, "Do you know who was the former leader of it?" And she's like, "There's many leaders." I go, No. Do you know who the leader was? I go, "It was a Puerto Rican half black man." And she's like, "That doesn't matter." I'm like, "Cool, white girl. Good story." Anyway, sorry.
Enrique, yes, Enrique is actually Cuban. But yes.
Cuban. God, I'm a racist. I completely threw them all together.
You think we all look the same. You think we all look the same, huh? Yeah. I knew it. Yeah.
I'll punish myself.
So yeah, Enrique, exactly. He's a black, very black Cuban man, and he was like the leader. Anyway,
Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. It's just funny because this is fresh. This was like a couple days ago, where it's like having this conversation. Anyways, go ahead.
Yeah, people are insane. They're insane. So, and Patriot Prayer was run by Joey Gibson, who was Japanese, and me, who's Puerto Rican, and we were called white supremacist Nazis all the time. Anyway, so Jay was a white guy. He was definitely white, but he had a black girlfriend, and he was not a white supremacist, and he was not a Proud Boy, and he was not a Nazi, and he was like the best guy ever, and he owned a business in Portland, and he lived in Portland. He wasn't there to destroy Portland. He was there to exercise his First Amendment right in his own city that he lived in and worked in and owned a business in. So we started speaking out about that on Facebook. We started saying Jay was not a white supremacist. Jay had a black girlfriend. And we started posting pictures of him and his black girlfriend. And we started proving that, because our friend who we loved and who's the nicest guy in the entire world was being defamed and just slandered everywhere, right? So we were standing up for him, and it was funny. Every time we would go live and talk about it, they would shut our videos down. They didn't want that narrative getting out, because this was like, they had to justify why Jay was murdered and why it was okay, and why there wasn't riots in the streets after Jay was murdered. How come his life didn't matter, right? So they had to justify it. And every time we talked about it, they shut us down. And then finally, like within that week that we were talking about it, they shut down our entire page, our Patriot Prayer page, we had several side pages. They shut those down. And then every single person that was an admin on the Patriot Prayer page, there were 7 of us, I believe, every single one of us had our personal pages also deleted off of Facebook. And then Facebook put out a statement saying that we were a violent social militia. And that's why they had to delete all of us off of Facebook.
How many followers did you guys have?
On Patriot Prayer, I think there was about 55,000. And then we had another group, like a smaller group that was intimate. And then there was probably like 4,000 there. And then our individual pages had, a range of like, 1,000 to 25,000 or whatever.
So you went from Patriot Prayer then to Lexit, correct?
Not instantly, but yeah, there was probably like a year in between.
And then it looks like, as I'm looking up the story as you're talking, Michael Reynolds or whatever you pronounce his name, he was killed by police. He worked security on behalf of Black Lives Matter protesters, because that's an organization worth talking about. Shot dead after he fled his apartment, got car, fugitive task force. That sounds fishy to me. Like, it's like, why not allow him to speak? I would love to see. I mean, I'm probably not going to lie.
He had a weapon.
Yes, but
from what I remember, he ran out. He was running like in between cars, but he had a weapon. And so they killed him.
Do it.
Because he had a gun.
Yeah, that'll do it. Chad Smith said he was sitting in car accelerator 200. Yeah, that sounds like a fun set of events. That to me, I remember that story distinctly, because I think that was kind of the beginning of kind of the occupation of the Pacific Northwest, and how it went from bad to just insane. And I had a friend that was just in Portland this last week. That's like, that city's unrecognizable. It's a complete wasteland. And Portland is one of the prettiest cities in this country, and they've just let it go to shit. I live in Texas. Watching what's going on in Austin is almost comical to me, because it's like, it doesn't matter what your state is, but when your municipality doesn't give a shit about police, that's what happens. You've seen the videos from Austin this last week, guys.
Yeah,
it's insane.
Yeah,
Texas, and crazy. They can't do anything, and there's people just storming police officers. I'm like, I don't know if they understand where this leads, because it doesn't lead any place good. It leads to complete anarchy.
That's what they say they want. They say they want anarchy.
Until they get it.
But they don't understand what that means.
No. Not at all.
They say that, but they...
So let's see a couple things before we wrap up. Let's go to this last election. I want to definitely really quick touch on Project Veritas, as that's big news. But I want to talk about this last election. Simple thing to say. We look at what happened. We thought there's going to be a red wave. I didn't. And then I'm not going to lie, I got caught up the week leading in, and I'm like, I think it's going to happen. I think maybe it will happen. I did a bunch of radio interviews a month in advance, 2 months in advance. I go, I think we're underestimating the power of some of the Democratic messaging. Before I get into my opinions, what do you think caused the red wave to not happen?
We did make some headway.
True.
I don't think it wasn't like a tidal wave, but it might have been like, Baby Beach or something. Here's the thing. We don't like to play by the current rules. We hate ballot harvesting because we think it's wrong. I agree. I think we should have paper voting one day, just like other countries do. ID one day on paper, counting done by the end of the night or whatever. Okay. You can make that happen. You have enough small districts to make that happen. So the way that we're doing it, I agree. It's crappy. It's a recipe for disaster and a recipe for fraud and cheating. However, those are the current rules. Ballot harvesting is legal in California.
Yeah.
We choose not to do it because we're above it. As conservatives, we're above it. We say, even our gubernatorial candidate said, listen, you guys, I know you don't like this word, but I'm a farmer and I like this word, and we need to do some ballot harvesting. He's like, you need to do it, because if we don't do it, we're not going to have the advantage that they have.
It's bringing the knife to a gunfight.
Yeah. That's a big part of it. And then it was interesting. The week of the election, I was actually in Arizona for another event for a wedding. And I happened to be at Vanessa Orabuena. She's the worship artist. She paints all those awesome.
She was at CPAC. Yeah.
Okay. So I happened to be at her studio. Her studio happened to be right next door to a liberal, like Katie Hobbs outreach outpost. Okay. So it was interesting. Those people are mobilized. They had meetings there every day with like 20 people. They had like signs, they had trainings, they had all this stuff on how to go out and ballot harvest. And that's what they were there doing. So I don't think we were
Is it
doing
legal
that.
it's legal in Arizona too? There's some states it's not legal. So
Yeah. So they were out there, but yeah, they were out there collecting and encouraging people to vote, encouraging their people. They knew where to go. They had maps, they had all kinds of stuff. I don't know if we're doing the same thing. I don't know that we're doing it. I think we just think like, hey, we're the good guys. We're going to play by the rules that we know are good instead of playing by the rules that everybody else is playing by. So I think that really hurt
a
us.
1994 game and they're playing a 2023 game. Really.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Even though the rules suck.
Yeah, I know, and it leads to the ability for much easier cheating. Like and I get it, but we can't be above. In the end of the day, we can't change the law. We can't fix it unless we're there. And if we can't get there because we're being too virtuous, it's completely pointless. Do you think take that away and look at some of the states that do outlaw ballot harvesting, and let's pretend like it didn't happen anyways. Pretend and say, do you think there was some issues that got us in trouble to why, why some platform ideas that got us in trouble across the board?
Are you speaking about abortion?
I'm hinting. Yeah.
I don't know. Some people said that. And then Bryson Gray actually did a whole live, actually many lives about this. And he disagreed. He said, if that was the case, statistically, we would have seen X, Y, and Z. And he broke it all down. I think it was potentially a negative talking point for some people. But he said, based on the exit polling and stuff and his assessment of it, that it actually wasn't the case. And I don't remember his exact breakdown of why, but he like rattled off the numbers, the stats, the people who voted for and what they voted for. And then he had articles that he was citing. And he said it really didn't affect the vote very much at all. And in fact, like more young single women voted Republican than previously. So, I don't know. There might be something to it, but
see, the exit polls show. So it depends on the state. There's some states that just became more conservative, but there is the exit polls that I did research on in the states that it was the more of the swing states. It mattered more nationally. It really wasn't a big issue, but again, this is a midterm election. It's state issues, it's county issues, and I saw 4 to 6% issue on a lot of the swing states, and a lot of the losses, especially the areas that would have tipped the scales in Senate. We're talking 1 to 2%. So on the exit polls, that was the top of their thing. And here's my problem. I think it was all by design. The Roe versus Wade being overturned was the worst time on the planet. The release of it, allowing the marketing from the Democratic side. And like we've kind of alluded to, Republicans are very tribal. We believe in our one belief system. And if somebody doesn't agree with us, just like what happened with Lexit, they shame that person, where instead of being all inclusive, the Democrats can look at somebody, and there's a lot of there. I'm not going to say a lot. That's a bad term. There are some pro-life Democrats, and then there's also some early stages pro-choice heartbeat bill Democrats, but they will look at their constituents and say, they're still my people. They're Democrats. So no matter what, even if they think that they should be able to kill a baby outside of the womb, it's still my people. It's disgusting, but that's how they win, again, the war instead of just some of these battles. And what I saw out of the election was that tribal nature. And again, we forced candidates into saying pro-life, which I get the point that it activates their base, but it alienated the middle ground if they were too forceful on it. And in order to not be considered a rhino, and actually rhinos in some ways are some of the most pro-life candidates we have, but in order to not be a rhino, they had to force feed that messaging. If I was to run for office and I was pro-life, I honestly wouldn't bring it up. If somebody asked, I'd say I'm pro-life. I wouldn't use that in my marketing. I think that is what destroyed the middle ground on voting, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, it's a sad thing that we're fighting about being able to murder our most innocent, vulnerable souls in the womb. Okay. So, but I see what you're saying. Like, I had a friend even say, Carmen, can't we just give a little bit on our standpoint? Like as conservatives, can't we give a little bit on our standpoint and say, yes, in cases of rape and incest? The fact is, in California, abortion is a constitutional right. So in my state, doesn't matter what you say about abortion, it's a constitutional right. Like it's law. So, and I keep telling people, and I used to be more stringent about the type of politicians that I would support. I used to say I was more stringent. Now I've come to realize that they're not Jesus. Shocking. They're not Jesus. Revelation. I had one. They're not Jesus. They're never going to be Jesus. They're never going to come close to Jesus. We're not voting for Jesus. Our Savior is supernatural, is above all of this.
Yeah.
But if we are going to try to create an environment that's palatable for us to live in as conservatives, we have to just try to get as close as we can to our moral values. We're never, and even amongst conservatives, as you've mentioned, we all have a different idea of what's okay and what's not okay. Some feel like gay marriage is okay. Some feel like abortion is okay. Some feel, X, Y, and Z is okay. And then there's others that are like, no. Mm-hmm. We're very strict on these things. I think for the ones that are very strict, I understand trying to hold the line because we know that the line is a slippery slope. There's no line. It's like, it's a slope. So how far and how fast do you want to go down that slope?
Right.
That's the thing. It leads quickly into, hi, my child is learning how to masturbate with dildos in kindergarten. It leads quickly into this.
It's helpful.
You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like for their health. What are you talking about? Like, and they keep using these words and trying to desensitize all of the things that we know are actually probably not good or not healthy or whatever. Like, we don't feel like they're good or right. They use words to desensitize so that they can slowly inch their way into laws. And now what I've been saying to conservatives is, listen, they've been inching their way into the conservative base. Right. The liberals have been inching their way over to get us to accept more liberal leaning laws. We're going to have to inch our freaking way out of this too. Yeah. The pendulum doesn't just go over here and fly back to the right side. Right. It doesn't happen. It has to go swing to the middle first. So you have to, it just has to, there's no other way around it. The pendulum has to swing through the middle before it can get back to the right if it's ever going to get there. So we have to get better at marketing, buzzwords, repeating the same thing over and over and over again like they do. Like they keep saying trans lives matter and all these things that like, sounds really good after a while. Like the more you repeat it, the more it becomes solidified in your brain and sounds like truth. We have to get better at all that. We need to take some plays out of their playbook and start doing that. But just the opposite stuff.
I just think that our come from feels different. And I think that I agree with you across the board. Like Black Lives Matter is one of the biggest farces in as an organization in history, but their marketing was so good and they got people early. I think the way that we have to understand that the pro-life concept has been bogarted in terms of, and honestly, I mean, I know a lot of the ultra pro-lifers do actually kind of feel this way. So I don't know if it's been bogarted, but it's such a hard line for people. And I think that there is also an argument that can make it almost seem hypocritical to force other people into that. So, and I'm going to ask you, and I'm going to go through this. So we talked about this before the call. I'm open with people when I talk about this, even people that are following is very, very conservative. And I would say most people are not the same thought process as me when I say that I am not pro-abortion by any means, but I am not against the idea of pro-choice. I'm very loud and about the fact that I should have a choice whether or not I stick a vaccine into my arm of any kind and then into our children. And then, of course, you'll say it's a life. It's different. So it is a life based on a religious belief system. But in the United States of America, and what a lot of us conservatives fight for, is the Constitution, which is the freedom of religion. And if somebody has a different religion that does not believe life begins at conception, all of a sudden that becomes a very gray area, which is why I start to argue. I think there is a logic, and it is a gray area. That's the other problem with this specific argument. is, to me, I'm like 12 weeks. I can see the person making a decision, a 17-year-old and whatever I get it. I see it. And I don't believe that I should be telling somebody biblically, religiously what to do when we have a freedom of religion in this country. I do believe Roe versus Wade being overturned was correct, however, but I just have, I have an issue with the overriding theme that we have to be so loud and proud about the pro-life concept, and also saying that the government shouldn't have a right to tell people what to do with their bodies. And the only reason we know what their body is based on our religious beliefs. Thoughts?
I don't think it's a religious belief. I actually am more scientifically, based when it comes to it. We would look at a single cell amoeba on the planet Mars as life. And when two cells come together and form a cell and then start multiplying into millions of cells in a matter of days, we don't call that life. So to me, that's not scientifically even sound. So not even from a religious standpoint, because yes, in the Bible, it says, I knew you before you were in the womb, like I knitted you together. But even not from that standpoint, even just from a scientific standpoint, I would have an argument against that. I would say it is life. What do you call life? Even one cell is life. One single living cell we call life. So
essentially we're separating humans from animals. Cause I've hunted. Have you like, if people go hunting, what if they kill a living deer, for example? That's a life.
Of course. Yes, it's a life. So, but yes, we are differentiating humans from animals. Yes, we are. Animals were for our food, obviously. And I think that every animal that we kill too, I think hunters they don't take that lightly. I think that they respect that life.
Which is why I think people that celebrate abortion, I do think that's disgusting. Like, I think Miley Cyrus has the abortion cake. I'm like, this is why you look like a shithead to, people that are Christian and people like me. And even though I am a little bit more on the open conversation side of it, I just think there is such a gray area on it. But we've gotten to that point. You give an inch, and then next thing you know, you've got a cake celebrating killing a baby. That's the reason I have trouble with it. And I think that is a topic that is a strong belief system. But in the end of the day, the bigger fight is to make sure that we can get the bulk of the Constitution, the bulk of Americans together, and still, yes, fight for the pro-life concept, of course, but to realize that if we want to win, I think that there is a stigma behind the concept of pro-choice and pro-life that is just a massive gray area, which causes contention in elections and I know Bryson, and I love his music. I like most of the things he says. Sometimes when he's ultra religious to people, I think he turns people off, but people love him no matter what. There's atheists that are big, like Trumpers that just love Bryson Gray. But I just think that some of that logic is we are fighting for that middle 10%. That's what we're fighting for when it comes to elections in this country. And I know people are like, no, I'm fighting for the life of an unborn child. And I get that. And it's very virtuous. And I love that passion. But if you're trading that virtuosity for the overriding fight, I think to me, that becomes an issue. That's my thought on it.
I can see that point of view. Yeah. I mean, I would love to ultimately get to a place where we value humans so much that we also value ones that we can't see yet. It's like when you ask a pro-choicer, like, when does it become a life? Like, they have so many different answers. Some of them say 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 9 weeks, when it's outside the womb. Like, there's no like answer for that. They have no cohesive answer.
Yeah.
So I think really they know it's a life. They know it's alive. They know it's, so I think all of it's done to like rationalize and I don't know how spiritual you are, but I really believe this is the biggest deception like Satan can offer us, which is like getting us to kill our own souls before they're even born, when they're the most crucial, most innocent, most, needy of us to protect them, like getting us to just like cut it off before they can even come into the world. I think that's like the biggest trick he ever pulled on us, getting us to believe that that's okay. From a spiritual standpoint, I think that it is a spiritual battle, and he loves to sacrifice children. And that's kind of what we're doing. So it's like, if we can eliminate that from the world, I think if we can get to that place, maybe in thousands of years, however long, like we'd be pretty good. We'd be a pretty good society. We'd actually like have respect for human life in all ways. I think it starts there. It
Yeah, and
starts
I
with
don't think we have respect for human
vulnerable.
life across the board, to be honest. Like
Yeah.
and that is the spiritual warfare that I know that you battle against. Talk about. I mean, even with the vaccine, like there's been the question posed to me, like, well, if depopulation was the idea, is there a way that somebody like a Bill Gates looks at this as he is saving the world because there is the data, which I don't believe, the data that shows that we're about to hit a tipping point of the amount of people that could be on this earth, which again, I don't think is accurate. I think we have I think we have billions to go before we even reach that. But does maybe Bill Gates know what he's doing, but thinks that he's being virtuous by saving us, by decreasing us from 8 billion or 9 billion, whatever we're at, down to a billion to save the world? I don't know. I think it's sick.
I think they want it to be 500 million.
Is
Isn't
it
that right?
500 million? Yeah.
500 million.
It's just, to me, we can't get inside people's heads. I think Bill Gates is the devil. That's just my opinion. He's one of the devils.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and we didn't get to vaccine stuff, but we've got to. Are you okay with a couple more minutes?
Yeah.
All right. Project Veritas, big news right now. Obviously, when we're shooting this week is the week that James O'Keefe has stepped down, kind of whatever you want to call it. He left. What are your overall opinions on the importance of Project Veritas to our movement, and also what it means to James O'Keefe leaving?
I think it's really interesting. I actually posted some stuff on Instagram last night about this because everybody had a knee-jerk reaction, just cancel Project Veritas. Most of them, I don't even think, read the Project Veritas statement that they put out about the spending. Now, in nonprofit organizations, things are very different than if you're just the CEO or the president of your own company. Like it's
Right.
very different. You're basically like, owned by everybody else. You're beholden to all of these people, and he set it up that way. That's the way he set it up. So he set up his board. He picked the board, and then it just seems very odd that they would turn. So obviously, there's two schools of thought. They are trying to destroy it from within, or there's another school of thought that there is something wrong with James's style and maybe his lavish spending, and maybe something was going to come down on them.
Yeah.
And they are the ones that are going to take the legal hit for that as the board. So I believe for the most part. So maybe there was a fear there that something was going to happen. Now, I don't know. It could be either thing. Like they could be bought off by Pfizer because the timing is very suspicious, or they could be trying to protect their ass in some other way. I mean, these are like James's friends. Like didn't he handpick these people?
The board. Yeah.
So why would they just suddenly do that? Like there's a lot. I believe there's got to be a lot more to the story than we know. And I'm not a big fan of knee-jerk reactions. I'm a big fan of sitting back and waiting and then letting things unfold before everybody just pounces on one, opinion and cancels everybody and oh my God and all this stuff. I mean, there's always more to the story.
I like the marketplace dictating a little bit. I don't mind people. And I saw your post and I felt, because I also I've heard some things that it doesn't sound like the people that I've heard said, he likes the ladies and whatever. To me,
I've heard a lot too.
Yeah.
A lot.
But then I've heard somebody that used to work for him that was one of his undercover journalists. He said to me, he was super straight laced. Granted, that was like 6 years ago. But I'm somewhere in between. But when I heard him speaking, I think the impropriety and the financial side doesn't make sense to me. Like he painted a very good picture in his exit and he had the receipts to show it. He's James O'Keefe. You got to expect that he's going to have the best documentation on the planet. Talked about the black cars, talked about the $12,000 music video or whatever it was, which was an employee party. And the timing's weird. Here's my thought. This is how powerful Pfizer is, because I don't think that these people would turn on him because of a financial situation. I think Pfizer is powerful enough, and I think that this is one of the reasons we're seeing people like Damar Hamlin go on national TV and keep his mouth shut for no reason. I think it goes above monetary stuff. I think this is the biggest, and this is me being a conspiracy theorist, this is the biggest mafia we've ever seen. Oh, yeah. There are threats that we don't know about, and I think that a lot of times we jump on people, we jump on parents. Oh, this pansy won't talk about the fact their kid had a heart attack. How dare they not question the vaccine? I feel like there's more to it. I feel like there's been threats across the board that we don't even see and will never even know about. And that would be the only explanation. You can't tell me with all the young people dying, there hasn't been one single parent go, weird, my kid's vaccinated. How is this being so silent? And maybe they are. Maybe the media is the one that's not just bought, but also threatened. That's what scares me about this whole thing.
I know that people are being paid off. I know that's happening. They're being paid off. They're being threatened. I also think the same thing happens in politics. Like, I think once you become president, you get walked into some room and they tell you, this is how it is now. And you're going to be a talking head and enjoy. And that, I mean, that's truly what I believe. So yeah, I think that's definitely got to be the case. I just think it's bizarre. Like, if they want to stop James, they're not going to stop him by ousting him from Project Veritas, because he's just going to go start something else.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, if his people, I think they came out and said, like, we stand with James. So if his people stand with James, aren't they just going to go like, okay, we're going to go from here and we're just going to go over here. Yeah. And we're just going to continue. And I mean, now with this controversy happening, he's going to be even more popular. And I guarantee you his donations and everything else are going to go through the roof. So this is actually going to catapult him. This is what's so funny is, like, when bad things happen to people, it actually works for their benefit in a lot of ways. Agreed. And so this is actually going to catapult James into even more financial gain, even more donations, even more people looking at what he's doing. And, you know, maybe that's part of the plan.
And I don't think he really even had a financial gain before. I mean, the guy, I mean, he makes.
No. I mean, just financial gain as far as, like, a nonprofit. Like,
he's going to be able to make
hey,
it.
We need money to survive, all 10 of us or 20 of us, however many our team takes, right? So even more people are probably going to donate to the cause. Now, that's my guess. I mean, this is actually going to, if Pfizer's goal was to stop him, I think this is going to backfire on them. I don't understand why they would do that.
Yeah,
because this is actually going to catapult him.
I get it. And again, there's so many different angles to look at it. And again, maybe some of the people from the board are like, I know he'll be fine after this, but I'm not going to lose my livelihood or family. So I'm going to continue to do this. And honestly, I think Project Veritas probably does not make it from this. I don't see it making it. Like, I don't think nobody knows who Project Veritas is. They know who James O'Keefe is with Project Veritas. So I think that's just what's going to happen with this. But again, I think he'll be okay. But what is the ultimate point from Pfizer then? You're right. So there's just so many different angles that we don't look at critically enough to really be able to formulate a full response and a full answer on it. But.
Right. Like, we don't know what the heck is going on. Like, I'm not saying this is true, but this could have been some master plan between James and the board to create, like, a crazy controversy. Not that happened, but, you know, there's a 0.1% chance that happened. But I'm just saying we don't know everything right now. So let's just, like, let the cards fall and then support whoever we love. If we love James, go support James. If you still love Project Veritas, go support them. Hopefully, I know that he's not going to stop. So this just probably lit a bigger fire underneath him. And I think in the end, it'll make him, you know, better. It'll make him more buttoned up, more of a go-getter, even more than he was before. He'll have even more donations, more popularity. Everybody's freaking out right now. So this can only help him. I mean, whatever he's going to do next, he's going to crush it. So Pfizer, if this was you, you just failed.
I think it was definitely a bad chess move. If that was the move that was made, who knows?
Yeah.
The other thing with vaccines, I mean, I think everybody knows where we stand on the current thing. But it was interesting you brought up childhood vaccines, and that's kind of where I want to end it with. Have you ever seen the movie Vaxxed?
Yes.
So I think what's fascinating is, like you said, messaging and marketing is so powerful. And we're losing that battle. If anybody actually watches that movie, they've deemed it a complete whack job, you know, alternative health, all this stuff. They're not saying you have to, and I think this is something that most people need to hear, because there is some conservatives that still are pro all childhood vaccines. They're not saying to get rid of the MMR. They have done research. I don't know if you remember, it's been a long time since I watched it, but it's something I took from it over and over in the research that I did. They have done enough of their own research to say the MMR vaccine does not have any link to autism if it's done after, I think, the age of 3 or after the age of 4. But the government is so beholden to pharmaceuticals that they will not change the schedule, even though that's what real data says. They won't change the schedule because that admits guilt. And that's the problem. Do you think that's the problem that we have with our current vaccine situation.
Which problem in particular?
The fact that no matter how much data is coming out there saying that the efficacy sucks, that it's dangerous, that VAERS is proving things that, I mean, anecdotally, we're seeing it all over the place, but they cannot even begin to acknowledge the slight danger because it admits full-blown guilt.
Now, nothing I say is going to get you banned off of anything, right?
We're at an hour 14. Usually the end of the show is when we can kind of get into this, but go ahead.
Okay. So like, I don't want to get you banned off of a platform by anything I'm going to say. Our government is basically owned by the pharmaceutical companies.
Fact.
Pharmaceutical company, the vaccine industry is the largest industry and the largest market they have. Hence, COVID vaccine. They were actually in like all their other drugs. If you look at their other drugs, the pharmaceutical industry is not doing so great. People are catching on that Vioxx kills and Fen kills and, you know, drugs can kill and stuff like that. But what they've never caught on to is vaccines. They think that they need vaccines in order for their kids to survive. They think that the marketing is so well done. They're actually a marketing company. They spend 3 times more money on marketing than they spend on research and development, the pharmaceutical industry.
Very true.
So they're a marketing company and they're very good at it. They've said, we don't know how to sell our products, but we know how to sell the fear so that people go out and buy our products. That's what they're doing. Mm-hmm. They've sold everybody the fear that if you don't have all of these vaccines, your child will die. You know, but if you look at other countries that don't give their children those vaccines, their children aren't dying. You look at Japan, who doesn't give vaccines until after the age of 2, they've been able to eliminate autism in Japan. Okay. So if you look at other countries, we as Americans, we are so short-sighted. We think America is the best medical system, the best country in the world. We must only look at what's going on in America because every other country is just backwards and hasn't figured it out.
Yeah.
Well, we rank 39th in the world in infant mortality. Why is that? If we're the best country in the entire world. And what plays into that? Our maternal care and our infant care. So why are we ranked so poorly? I mean, that speaks for itself. We should be looking at the other countries that have better health outcomes for their children, that have less autism in their children, and be looking at what they're doing. And if we started doing what they're doing, we would be able to curb the situation in our country too. But it's a matter of also, and you may be aware of this, America is one of only 2 countries in the world that can advertise a pharmaceutical drug on television. Us and New Zealand are the only 2 countries on the planet that allow advertising of pharmaceutical drugs on TV.
Yeah.
Now, if you look at that alone, that should tell you something. Okay.
Right.
But so we are completely beholden to the pharmaceutical industry. It is the media is completely beholden to them. All of the television and Hollywood and everything that you see here is beholden to the pharmaceutical industry because they are their number 1 largest customer. 70% of our revenue is generated by the pharmaceutical industry if you were on TV. Mm-hmm. So right there, you have every single wall up. You have the media protecting you. You have producers protecting you. You have Hollywood protecting you. You have the NBA protecting you. You have everybody. And then the government, everybody's protecting that industry because it makes them all of their money.
Yeah.
And that's the bottom line. And the CDC, as you probably know as well, if you've been paying attention to that, they own like 49 patents for vaccine stuff. It's like, they are not just a CDC. They also are making money off of these drugs. So it's a conflict of interest. It's the fox guarding the hen house.
All of the research that we show, whether it's the CDC or even the actual manufacturers themselves, are done in-house with the company that profits on it. How that is not something that you can look at an intelligent person from the left and go, you don't see an issue with them doing that. No, why do you think that everything is nefarious? Seriously?
Right.
I mean,
it's literally the fox guarding the hen house. It's literally. And when you mentioned that parents, even conservative parents and parents that don't want the COVID vax, they still think that the childhood vaccines are a great idea. And I'm like, well, I made a reel about this. I said, there's a lot of reasons why conservative parents and certain parents don't want their children to have the COVID vaccine. And I listed a bunch of reasons. And then I said, but have you checked your regular childhood vaccines? Because they're all exactly the same. Hardly any testing, not third-party tested, not placebo tested, barely tested. Some of them were like tested for like 8 days, and then they inject your children with them. Conflict of interest, all of the reasons why, abortions made with aborted fetal tissue, all of the reasons why people don't want the C-19 vaccine, same reasons apply to your current vaccine schedule, and parents don't even realize that.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it really is mind-boggling. And even with the fetal tissue, that's actually the one that trickily gets you. People don't like that on the fact checkers, but no, a lot of the initial testing was done with that. That is a fact. Factually, it was done. It's not necessarily in the current stuff, but that's how they created the synthetic to get to that point, which you're using a synthetic of something that really shouldn't have been in the body in the first place. That's just that's a fact, ladies and gentlemen.
we can, and then there's a whole nother side topic about that we could talk about another time, about how genetic material cannot be filtered from those like kidneys and lungs and things like that are cultured. Genetic material it can't be filtered out of it. And then you inject that into, let's say you have a baby girl, but that genetic material from that kidney was a male.
I wonder why we're having so many issues with testosterone and confusion and all that stuff.
Yes,
makes perfect sense.
Yeah, it's something that people don't think about, and a lot of scientists have blown the whistle on that, and nobody wants to listen.
Carmen, where can everybody find you?
I'm basically on Instagram now.
You're banned from Venmo, right? You're banned from
Venmo. You can't even Venmo me anything, It's like Venmo called me a domestic terrorist. PayPal and Venmo both banned me on the same day because I was doing a fundraiser for a prayer group. And so, what's that? GoFundMe, PayPal, and Venmo basically all banned me at the same time for doing a fundraiser for a prayer group because we're domestic terrorists. So that was fun. I was banned off Facebook. I was also banned off Instagram, but luckily I had a backup. So that's what I've been using as my backup account. And then I created Carmen Estel Official. So I'm Carmen Estel Official is my main page. Or Spicy Street Convos is my backup page. And more to come later. My website, carmenestel.com, if you want to get a hold of me. But I created that because I kept getting banned off of everything. I said, I better have a website so people can find me just in case.
Very, very smart.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, ladies and gents, this has been another episode of Blunt Force Discussion, BFD, because A, we have Blunt Force Discussion, B, I got big fucking deals on here. Carmen has done a great job making a name for herself. If you like our gear, go to awakenotwokestore.com. Use Awake for 15% off. Carmen, I'm going to hook you up with something. We'll figure that out after the call at one point. What else do I got for people? Also, remember our sponsors, Super Wicked Fast. If you are a business owner, it's on the bottom right now. Employee retention credits, you help us out as pretty much as well by signing up for it. It doesn't cost anything. If you've got a business that had employees, even if you've already got the PPPs or what are they called? All the different things. If you already had that, you still can get ERC, which is based off of the employee taxes the year before, up to $26,000 per employee. They've already given out billions and billions on this. And this is government money that's going to be taken anyways. You're not stealing from anybody. Make sure you get it. That's how we do small business stuff. Lastly, the Dr. Artist Show, one of our sponsors, thedrartistshow.com, BFD at checkout. He has got all the different things that help protect you from the coof. Will also help rid the stuff. And you can also see a video. I always put in the link of his glutathione treatments to flush it from the system if you've already gotten the jab. By the way, back to the gear, by the way, we've always had unvaccinated Lives Matter shirts. We just added vaccine injured Lives Matter shirts. So if you want to get that look, maybe we'll talk to see, maybe one of those will be your go-to, Carmen. So that's it. Make sure you guys check that out. You guys have done a great job supporting him and us on that. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been another episode of Blunt Force Discussion. Share, share, share.